world of work is ever evolving. What employers want from their prospective employees definitely changes depending on the trends in their particular industry. What lies at the heart of your personal career success is your ability to be able to position yourself against those changes and those trends. And that essentially is your personal brand. We've always typically associated branding with large corporations and companies, but social media, pace of change has changed all of that. I know this whole subject tends to sort of divide people and divide people's opinions, and I think that's largely generational. Would you agree?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. It didn't matter so much 15, 20 years ago.
It didn't, did it? I mean, you didn't have the online presence that people would evaluate. But now, whether or not you care about your online presence, the reality is you have a personal brand as a result of it. And since your personal brand reflects your personal identity to prospective employees or even prospective clients, it really, really matters, because what do people do? They look at you, they make their mind up about you, your identity, your personal story, what you stand for.
And that happens very, very quickly, as we know and as we'll explore. It has far-reaching personal benefits as well, being clear on your personal brand. So what we're going to do in this podcast is explore why personal branding is so important, how you can come across clear in the professional environment, and what you can do to take control of your personal brand and, importantly, amplify that in the marketplace.
And as always, as we always attempt to do and promise, is not to make this too theory-based, but to actually really give you some very practical things that you can go and do. And hopefully, to convince you to take control of your personal brand.
Yeah, absolutely. So a good place to start is probably, what do we actually mean by personal branding? What is a personal brand?
The answer to that question, I think, is pretty clear. All right. And that is, it's the perspective that someone else holds about you, what they would say when you're not in the room, what emotions come to mind when they think about you, what feelings come to mind, what opinions come to mind, what would they say to other people without you being there to influence them.
Yeah, I think Jeff Bezos once said that, didn't he?
It's their experience of having a relationship with you.
Yeah. I think the important factor to think about as well is that the reason it's so important is if you're in a high-performing organisation, well, there's loads of people that are good at doing their job. So what's going to make you stand out from the crowd? How you do what you do are the factors that make up your personal brand. How you behave, what you stand for, your values.
Yeah, it's not just what you do. It's their what do you actually like to work with? What is it going to be like to work with you? I often remark about, you're invited to a meeting and you get a letter from or an email from your boss, and we'd like to involve you in a project. It's not uncommon for people to sort of look at the CC list and they have a look through and think, oh, who else is involved in this? And as you scan the list, you're almost like thinking, I see. And you're literally, and you almost get this instant feeling when you think about
physiological response.
You're thinking about these people. Oh no, not them. That's going to be a real drag. Oh, they're a good laugh. This is going to be fun. Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
But interestingly, it's the same when you see some people's name come up on your phone, isn't it?
Exactly
you see a call coming in and you either think, oh yeah, I'll take this. This will be a good call, or flick that one for later.
It goes straight to your emotions, and you're either excited or really looking forward to killing the call and not taking it. And it's an instant thing.
I think as well, it's important to note that, research says that 70% of employers will search on social media to get information that will contribute to their perception of you as an individual candidate. So it makes sense to take charge of this, not only in terms of face-to-face interactions and what you do in the workplace, but how you appear online and making sure that is consistent with what you want it to be.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't typically leave remarks about, you wouldn't like leave a copy of everything you've done throughout the entire month on, you know, for everybody to see on your desk. But it's essentially what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is I know that, you know, a friend of mine who runs a business, he says one of his go-to places is he checks Facebook.
Yeah.
He wants to find out a little bit about how do these people live their life, whether that's right or wrong, and whether we should or should not look at someone's private life. The reality is it's the world we live in, and therefore if they see you out doing crazy things at the weekend, they might ignore that. They might go, you're the right person for our company, or they might think, not so sure about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and it's a public forum.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're putting it out there, expect for it to be seen.
You wouldn't expect, you certainly, people in the media and people who are known certainly take very good care of their personal brand, as a corporation will. A corporation will go to great lengths to make sure that their brand is held in high regard and is very consistent. And anyone who breaks those brand guidelines or veers outside of those, then you'll get the brand police on you. So if you think about it the same way, we should be looking after our brand in the same way. And a really useful thing to do is, if you haven't done this, is just plug your name into Google, see what comes up, what images come up, places you've been to, comments you've made, everything will be there to be seen. Are you happy?
Yeah, I did that recently, and I'm a very talented artist, apparently, somewhere in America.
Are you indeed? Well, there you go.
Yeah. But I totally agree with you. And I think, you know, at best for most people, it's like a confusing patchwork of different information. So it makes sense to actually be intentional about this and really think about how you show up in the physical and virtual environment. And I also think that doing this exercise, well, I've found it personally, you know, when you think about your values and how you want to show up in the world, it helps you make better decisions about things that you want to say yes to and no to, people that you want to interact with and need to interact with, and also what you need to learn in order to show up and make the contribution you want to make to the world.
Well, it becomes a compass, doesn't it? You know, it's like getting clear on a part of your brand is your purpose, and purpose, as we know, is central to the choices you're making. So the clearer you can become, the more intentional you are, the more likely you are to promote those opportunities into your life that are consistent with where you're trying to get to. So I'm having this conversation with somebody just yesterday, an executive who is in a fairly senior position, and through his own success, he's kind of got himself a little bit pigeonholed into one particular area, but he wants to branch out of that. And he wants to move into other roles within his own organisation. But he's got this slight conflict because he's been so successful, the organisation want to keep him there. He also knows that if he is to be successful in doing a wider, more general management role, which is what he's after, he needs to be able to demonstrate that skill. And so I was saying to him, I said, well, the first place to start is start being really clear about what you do want. And how many people you have this conversation with? None. Who else knows about it? Nobody. Have you had a conversation with your boss about it? Not really.
Yeah.
So would you be able to explain to me now exactly what it is? Well, I'm sort of. And I went, well, the first place to start is to get really clear about what you want to do and why you feel that you particularly got the skills to do it. And as you say, where are those gaps?
Yeah.
And then once you get clear about it, you're much more likely to bring it up in conversation.
Yeah, your energy goes in that direction, doesn't it?
Conversations lead to other conversations with other people. Someone is talking to someone you've just spoken to who happens to talk about something that you would like to do. Oh, I was only speaking to, Roger the other day. He would be absolutely perfect for this. So the starting point is to get really clear.
And then, we often say in sessions, don't we, if you're not taking charge of your own personal brand, you can guarantee that someone else is doing that for you. And your example is great. People are making assumptions based on what you are good at and they see you doing.
They can only assess you against what you do.
Exactly. It's the best kept secret if you don't actually pay attention to it.
And I think that this leads to the real struggle that other people might have is not quite understanding what you do stand for. And if I can't get clear on that myself, it may lead you to opportunities that perhaps you don't want, or other people will start making choices about your career direction that you're not entirely happy with. So getting clear to others and being on the front foot, think about branding as a sort of mini personal marketing exercise. You know what you want to attract. Clients or corporations, companies know the clients they want to attract. They put out a certain message.
Yeah.
People have an affinity with that message, and therefore they draw more of those people to themselves. They draw more consumers or more buyers of their product. In the same way, as you are a mini limited company in yourself.
UPLC.
Yeah, you are selling your services and you're hiring yourself out for so much per annum to prospective employees or buyers of your services. You've got to attract those people by getting clearer yourself in the first place.
And I think, as if there's business leaders listening to this, it's important. It's a really valuable thing to encourage your team to do, because it's only great for the organisation if there's a clear sense of what individuals in your team stand for and how they bring their talents to bear in terms of the client context. So it's only, it's not a negative thing. People aren't going to get clear on their personal brand and then suddenly go off and market themselves elsewhere. You're marketing yourself every day, when you're delivering to clients. So it makes sense for everybody to be clear about that.
At the heart of it is about getting clear on your own personal value proposition.
Yep.
And then, as you alluded to earlier, is how you then differentiate yourself against other people.
Yeah, particularly important, just sort of, finishing off on the why it's so important, particularly important in a gig economy as well. People go from project to project, often being assessed by, individuals in an organisation, but also, in the gig economy, going from job to job, role to role, not a job for life anymore. You don't have the same colleagues that know you inside out, over decades. You're going from role to role now. So it's really important to be clear.
Yeah, you can't rely on the same community of people. You're going from one community of people to another, one organisation to another, one client to another. So you're relying on what is around you and what the world is saying around you and the story you're telling people. So it informs people. And that's the power of it. So anyone listening to this, what we're really saying is take charge of your brand before someone else does. Get clear about what your story is. Get clear about what you stand for so that it enables other people to know what to buy into and what you have to offer, quite often long before they've even potentially met you as well. Yeah. So the question is then, how do we do this? And how do we get to a place where the corporations have reached? Apple has communicated so consistently that its brand is all about innovation. When you buy an Apple product, that's what you expect. Nike repeatedly tells us, just do it. It's all about power and performance. BMW is synonymous with engineering excellence. So when you buy anything BMW, that's what your expectation is. And that's very powerful, isn't it? There's no question. There's no deliberation. You know what you're going to get. You know what to expect. I know people that I work with, that I've worked with over a number of years, or I've got to know. When I think about their name, I know instantly what I'm going to get.
Well, there's loads of examples in the world of individuals like that, isn't there? Like Richard Branson, for example, adventurous entrepreneur. He's not going to necessarily toe the line. He's the creative maverick. Someone like Mo Farah, you wouldn't associate him with personal branding, but he has a very strong personal brand of being obviously high achiever, down to earth, family man, work hard ethic. Someone like Michelle Obama, she's a real strong advocate for empowerment and women, and they bring to mind a very clear image and set of feelings that give you an experience of either seeing them, reading about them, and we come across people day to day.
You could be listening to this and thinking, I don't have the resources that Apple has, or Nike or Michelle Obama. And of course we don't. So how do we go about it? And how do we take some of because what we are advocating here is that the very same core principles
Absolutely.
for creating that brand we can do ourselves.
And it's about being intentional about that, and that costs nothing. And I think Harvey Coleman has a model that we use on the Power Up program in Brand Power.
Yeah.
And he talks about taking control of 3 elements of your personal brand: your performance, so what you actually do; your image, so how you do what you do and what that looks and feels like to other people; and your exposure. So it's no good knowing all of these things yourself, but you need to, especially with social media, think about how that is seen and who you need to engage in order to amplify that.
And the main point he's making there is that performance only really accounts, in terms of differentiation, it probably only accounts for 10 to 20% maximum.
Yeah.
Why? Because think about yourself, you're applying for a new role in an organisation, either internally or externally. A number of candidates are going to be down selected. When you look at those candidates on paper, pretty much all of them will be able to demonstrate they can do that job. They're all going to put their best foot forward. They're all going to show themselves. They've got the credentials. In other words, they have the performance criteria to qualify for that particular role. So whilst it's important, it gets you in the door, it's not going to be the thing that makes the biggest difference. So the next thing you mentioned is image. And this is more to do with what we were alluding to earlier, and that is the perception or view that people hold of you without you being there to influence. What comes to mind? What emotions come to mind when they think about you? What words might they use to describe you? It's very interesting for me in the work that I've done, when I've been in an executive committee where there's talking about new candidates, and they're talking about a selection of new candidates for a particular role. And HR typically would have produced some sort of dossier of various different candidates. And I've been in a room many times where the CEO or the senior person in the room said, I tell you what, before you hand out those prepared documents, can we just have a quick chat about some of the names on the list? And, someone will start to scribble the name of the person on the flip chart, and, Michael's name goes up or whatever. And they have a quick chat about Michael, and they go, oh, yeah, I kind of know Michael. Yeah, I can see why he's on the list. But is he, is he the guy that's sometimes a little bit hesitant? And someone else, yeah, I know what you mean by that. I can see why he's on the list, but he does sometimes perhaps lacks a little bit of confidence. Next person's name is Helen. Ah, yes, I remember Helen. She spoke at the conference last year. Very bright and breezy, always got a very sharp, clear point of view, comes across really well, brilliant with the clients. So she's already ahead of the game, and Michael straight away. Yeah. By the time we go down the list, a few other bright and cheerful people, our first candidate, Michael, is hardly getting a look in.
Yeah, and the weighting then goes in favour, and individuals on that panel will defend your selection. They will make sure that you're on the list, and by talking about you and the experience of being around you, they will be,
if you've got good support.
Yeah.
Who's going to speak, who is going to speak up on your behalf when you're not in that room. And that is what we mean by image. And that's why it's so important. I know it's frustrating to think that people are not potentially being more objective, and they're being subjective, but we're humans. And we have these biases, and when we're asked our point of view, we can get quite lazy. We very quickly generalize around your experience of somebody.
And your performance isn't just subjective, it's what you do and how you do it to deliver the results that you deliver. So it's all important.
Yeah. So the final one is exposure. Exposure is about how well people know you. So you've got clear on who you are, or you've been able to communicate that. Who knows about you? Who's got your story? Where are you putting your story? How well are you communicating your story?
Is it consistent? Is it authentic?
Yeah. I've heard a couple of stories of people who have been very intentional 2 to 3 years out from the role they were trying to get. And they started figuring out, what do I need to do? What do I need to say? What do I know about this company? What kind of things would they be looking for from someone like me?
Yeah.
And therefore writing, whether it's writing blogs, articles, or getting involved in projects that are going to cultivate the types of skills that would then later demonstrate you have the skills to do that future role. Now, that's being quite strategic.
Yeah.
And it worked. And so by the time they got to the interview, even though you were competing against hundreds of other people, when they actually look back at your track record, they're seeing evidence of the very things they need to see.
That's hugely impressive, isn't it?
It is very impressive, and it's more sophisticated. You know, we're not in a world where 20, 25, 30 years ago we, plug our CV into the organisation, and they have a scour them, and someone reads through them.
Yeah.
It's a lot more sophisticated than that now.
And I think people are becoming a lot more sophisticated in how they're presenting things like CVs as well, So I think, all of those three elements are really important.
Super, and the point of personal branding, it speaks much more loudly to those final two elements. So what Harvey talks about is, I think, 10-20% is performance, 30-odd% is around image, and 60-odd% is all down to exposure. Who knows you, and what do they know you for, and how well do they know you?
Yeah.
So that's why we need to focus on personal branding.
Yeah. So what are some of the questions that people listening to this can reflect on in order to start getting clear on their own personal brand?
I personally would always start with values. I think that really speaks to the heart of actually who you are and what you stand for, and therefore is speaking to your personal authenticity.
Yeah.
And if I was following you around, if I was with you as a friend, working with you as a colleague, what would I see you talking a lot about? It's easy for anybody to trot out the words integrity and honesty in an interview. But is that something you really focus on all the time? Are there examples of you doing that? Are you a person that tends to speak up when it's not convenient to?
Yeah.
Do you speak up when it's difficult? Do you speak up when it's likely to divide opinion? Do you speak up when you are likely not to get the support of people, but you're standing for something you absolutely believe in? If you're doing that, that speaks to me, someone who holds integrity at a much higher value. They're placing a higher value on it, and therefore they live their life true to that particular value.
Yeah.
Now, contrast that with somebody who is known consistently for their creativity. They're always the person that sort of thinks about the off-wall idea or out-the-box thinking. They provide alternative points of view. They like quirkiness.
Yeah.
They like difference. They're not afraid about that. And it's just a natural thing.
Yeah.
And it's something they really value. And they make decisions to be around creative people. So when we talk about personal values, we're not talking about manufacturing something that, sounds
You've seen
like
on a poster somewhere.
Yeah, just absolutely. Really be completely honest about it. Left to your own volition. What do you talk about? What do you do? And
I get a physiological response when I actually think of some of the things that I value, and that gives me a signal that it is, it is something that's very authentic. If you look at a set of words, on a piece of paper that you write down and you don't really, get a reaction, then maybe there are things that you think you should value, but you actually don't. So, it is time and an opportunity to be really honest with yourself.
Being honest with yourself and being authentic is thinking about when you've got free time. This is always a good example. If you had more time, how would you spend that time? If you had free time at work, how would you spend that time? If you immediately focus on, spending time with people and developing people or learning, that speaks to me that that's something that you naturally want to do, is something that you naturally are.
You would choose to do even if you're not being paid for it.
That's the whole point. And therefore, it's much easier that when you then talk about those values, you can talk more authentically about them. You can give stories, you can give anecdotes, you can support them with something that actually it speaks to the heart of actually who you are. And you know when it's true because it just feels right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to talk about it. So get really clear on what you really value. One of our key exercises on values as a little check is when someone's got a list of values, we then say, what would other people have seen you do that would let you know you value that value? If we take it at a personal level, and I write down health, but no one's ever seen me ever talk about it.
And I've seen you eat donuts.
No, right. They see you eating the wrong food, not sleeping well, drinking too much, never talking about exercise.
Yeah, that's a should, not a...
You can say you value health, but is there evidence of you valuing health? If you're all about achievement and success, and that's something that drives you and you're motivated by achievement, people should be able to see examples of you doing that.
And I think that's the key. To get clear on this is such a key element, because if people are what I see sort of sometimes demonstrating like a surface level, they're saying something but they're not doing something, then it really damages trust. It damages your connection with that person, in the first place. So values, 100%, get really, really clear on those. What are some of the other things that make up a personal brand then?
I think story is really important. It's what is your backstory? What has led you to the place where you are today? People feel a little bit shy about this. They feel like they're kind of, why would people be interested in me? Well, the reality is people are interested in you, particularly if they're wanting to buy you. They want to know what your story is. So get comfortable with talking about it. And don't think you have to tell, I don't really have an exciting story. You do. And that is your own personal story. Your story is... Every story is an exciting story. Unique.
Yeah.
So it's not about, I've been around the world and climbed every mountain and peak and done loads of stuff for charity or whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you've done. And, you've come from humble beginnings, you've become from a successful family or whatever, whatever it is.
Your story is your story.
Your story is your story, and and people are always interested.
And I think that is the whole purpose of this, is about creating connection, isn't it? People connecting to you as a brand, and that is part of your whole.
You could ask literally anybody. If you're in a conversation and I don't know somebody, and I'm always sort of intrigued and think, I wonder what's the story for this person?
Yeah.
What's their story?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? And very quickly you can start to find out the unique. Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. You lived there and you moved there. You worked here. You're from a large family, small family, travelled a lot. Father was in the military or whatever. It's so that these situations or your story has shaped who you have become.
Yeah.
And often when we talk about who we are today, it is being shaped by all those circumstances, and that is your story. So don't be afraid to talk a little bit about yourself and what has led you to where you are today and the choices you're making today.
Yeah.
So get really clear on your story.
So we talked about values, we talked about story. I guess the obvious next one is to think about the things that you're really good at.
Yeah, what do you love to do and what are you good at? Those two, passions and strengths.
Yes.
There's various tools available. Strength Finder 2.0 is always a good go-to tool. There are plenty of others as well.
We'll put a link to that actually in the show notes so people can have a look.
And even if it just helps you by answering the questions, that's often what I think these tools are quite useful for. To get to the output, you've got to answer some questions. As you're being asked the questions, it gets you thinking about, actually, no, I really do love... I am the person that loves to complete things. Or I am the person that likes to bring people together. I am that person that likes to look for an angle, look for an edge. I am the person that it always tends to end up doing the sort of analytical work. So find out a little bit about what those natural strengths are, and then how do they overlap with the things that you really love to do. Because you could be good at something, but you might be good at it, but it's not particularly interesting for you.
Yeah.
Typically, they do coincide, and you'll tend to do your best work when you do something that you're really good at, and you enjoy doing it. So getting clear on your strengths, getting clear on where they overlie with your passions. Again, when you talk about those to a prospective employer or a prospective buyer of your services, that it creates a point of differentiation.
Yeah.
This is your unique mixture of what you're really good at, where your strengths really lie, where people can rely on you to do certain things and be really great, and where does that overlap with what you love to do.
And I think you can reflect obviously on this yourself, but also ask other people. We do an exercise in Power Up, which is people send out an email or a text to 15, 20 people and get them to share the words that they would use to describe them, and that all helps to build this picture, doesn't it? And we'll put a power tool in the show notes as well to really help you with some of the questions and things that
yes,
we're
your
talking about.
unique ability, your unique contribution, your unique attributes. It's a very, very powerful exercise, and people are often surprised about what comes back.
Yeah, interesting to compare. You create your own list and then compare it with what others are saying. There might be some surprises in there.
Well, there could be some things you're missing
surprises,
and undervaluing or not appreciating that actually is how people are valuing you. So that's your unique contribution. Very powerful exercise. People love it, and it enables you to see how you're actually showing up, how other people are valuing what you can offer.
Yeah.
We've talked about values. We've talked about story. We've talked about your strengths and your passions and where they overlay. The final bit, I think, to speak to is your purpose.
Yeah.
And these all feed into this because what is purpose if it's not actually living true to your values?
Yeah. So your purpose and the impact you have.
The impact you want to make. What do you feel you are here to do? And this is rather much more difficult. We know this, and we've talked about this before. It's a bit more nebulous subject. Much easier to write down a vision. Much easier to write down
set of goals,
objectives. That's much easier to write down what your purpose is. It takes a little bit more introspection. But if in articulating to others, you can actually speak to this, it's very, very powerful. And to be able to articulate to, if I'm selling to a prospective client and I talk about what our purpose is of an organisation, it really resonates with them. Over and above, obviously, being here to be successful as a company, what we're really here for is X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
We want to be able to help people flourish with their ability to be able to win more business or
live more purposeful lives
or make the most of themselves as a leader or whatever it is. If you can speak to the heart of actually why you are here and beyond making a profit,
why you do what you do,
very, very powerful. At the heart of your personal brand message are all these components. And there's no hard and fast rules in here, but having read numerous books, read hundreds of articles on this and talked a lot about it, essentially they're covering these areas.
Yeah.
Values are always there, and we spoke about the need for them to be authentic. Your story is always there. What's your brand story? What's your personal story? Be proud of it. It's unique to you. Where do your strengths really lie? Get comfortable with that. Being able to see where they overlap with what you really love to do, what you enjoy, because you generally do your best work there.
Yeah.
And then how does all this feed into what your ultimate purpose is?
Yeah.
What are you here to do? What you want to do and why you want to do it. So putting all of that together into some sort of, bit like a sort of LinkedIn page, about you section, that's kind of where it would go.
Yeah.
Or if someone were to ask you, tell me a little bit about yourself. Everyone hates that question.
You can get out your...
It's the kind of elevator pitch. If you had 2 or 3 minutes to describe a little bit about yourself, if you can do that in a really succinct way, and we know we work with people on our Power Up program to get them, one, being able to do it, but most importantly, to get comfortable with talking about themselves.
Yeah. And, that can often be the uncomfortable thing about this. I think it's also what that statement provides is, like you've mentioned before, your compass, because it's how you show up in line with that. So it might not be that you're actually standing up and sharing your elevator pitch on a day-by-day basis, but you sort of are in how you act and behave. So being intentional about how you articulate that gives you that compass from which to operate from.
Exactly. And if you say that to enough people, somebody somewhere is going to go, there's something you said to me when I met you that really resonated.
Yeah.
And that is what you want. Now, because they're resonating with you, they're believing you, they like what you said, and they've found the perfect opportunity for either you to help with them work with them as a client, or potentially a new project, or it might be a new opportunity that's come up within an organization, or let me introduce you to a friend of mine I think you get on really well with. But if you haven't told people those things in the first place, how do they know?
Yeah.
It's all a bit fuzzy, isn't it? What do I really believe in?
Yeah.
What do you really stand for? That's the problem with confusing brands, and it's difficult for consumers to know what to buy into.
Yeah.
The other little thought on this, having worked with lots of people on this, they do go through this process of thinking, but if I say that, they might not think I'm this. So they start thinking they're more concerned about what they're not standing for. And I think that is a myth.
What's that quote? If you stand
for everything,
you
stand for nothing, kind of thing. Yeah, the principle of that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the known things in marketing. The clearer you get, and the more focused, the more niche you become, it doesn't actually exclude everything else. It actually has the opposite effect.
Yeah. And in terms of the image part of the pie, good to think about how you want people to describe the experience of engaging with you. And again, we'll put all of this in the power tool. Is it a good time now for us to move on to the exposure part of it and how you can actually amplify your brand? Because you used a great example earlier, someone getting clear on what they wanted for themselves, but they hadn't shared that with anybody. So what are we talking about when we're talking about amplifying your personal brand?
I think this is, first of all, you've got your online presence, which we've spoken about, and your offline presence. So online presence is, if I were to go onto your LinkedIn page or other social media, what would I see?
Yeah.
What would I see you talking about? What kind of things have you posted? What articles have you repurposed and reshared?
And people obviously see the comments that you have put on other people's posts as well. Particularly on LinkedIn, you can see all of the activity, can't you?
Yeah.
So it's useful to think about the networks and the people and the accounts that you're engaging with and how you show up in those accounts as well, so that there is consistency with your intention.
I mean, think about checking out someone's profile and there's literally nothing there at all. I mean, that really puts you at a disadvantage if you've been very inactive. And, some people love social media, other people loathe it. The reality is that it's part of our lives today. And, I know it took me a while to get comfortable with it. And I think used wisely, it can be very, very powerful. Yeah. It's a way of somebody getting a inside view as to what you're like without them really knowing you.
Yeah. And I think there is the mistake people sometimes make is that they think that employers, prospective employers or other people might just look on LinkedIn, but they don't. They look everywhere. It's not appropriate to think, oh, well, that's just my personal... you show up everywhere. So it's good to be, it's not to be contrived and false or anything like that. You want to show up authentically, but just be aware that it's all visible. So
it's
make
all
sure
visible.
it's consistent.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, if you're going to be dancing on the table in a drunken stupor at the weekend, fill your boots. But remember that if your best friends filmed it and put it up on a social media thing,
it's just being aware.
You might want to take control of that.
or if you fell over in a wheelie bin.
Well, there you go. Absolutely, yes. My most famous clip ever was falling over and trampling down my neighbour's wheelie bin. Amusing.
Went
but
viral.
that kind of... well, actually, people didn't know I was in the bin. That's the point, right?
No.
They don't know that.
So the entrepreneur Gary Vaynerchuk, that is probably one of the most prolific examples of personal branding and marketing out there.
Fantastic story.
Millions of viewers and hugely successful. What he says is be distinctive, be real. So be authentic, provide value. So make sure that you're not just consuming, that you actually are providing value as well. He actually talks about building a community. That's pertinent, obviously, to his entrepreneurial activities. But I think those first three, being distinctive, keeping it real and providing value, are really good yardsticks for online
I think the value
interactions.
point is very well made, actually. And it's something we haven't spoken about. In terms of exposure, if you're putting things out, look, there's no harm in having a bit of stuff on your feeds that are, to do with fun. But if it's all just fun, silly stuff, then what does that say about you versus somebody who is posting articles or repurposing things that are actually of value to other people? We know in our own organisation, Lisa, that we are very mindful about what we're putting out that's adding value for other people to consume. We were talking to one of our Power Up team the other day, and people who on the program, and she was a little reticent to put things out on LinkedIn. Yet she wants to expand her profile and her reach. Sort of a bit of a catch-22 there, because she's thinking, oh, who am I to do this? And I said, look, you have something to say. You've got plenty of experience. Let people know by saying something that you really believe in. And everyone's got their own unique experience. Everyone's got their own knowledge. If you come at it from a personal story point of view, it's not authentic to you. Write about it, talk about it.
And it's not,
don't be shy.
You don't have to do videos or anything like that. You can show up in many ways. You can write articles, you can contribute to other people's posts, you can put out surveys. There's loads of different ways that you can do that. And I think, as well as online presence, you can amplify your brand, obviously, through the networks that you have physically as well. So thinking about, the platforms maybe that you can go and speak on, the networking events you can attend, the conferences that you can attend, learning events that you can engage in, and people. We do an exercise around stakeholder mapping, don't we, in brand power. And I think it's good to be intentional about the connections that you have and need to make in order to amplify.
Yeah, very
your
powerful
brand.
Exercise to map out who do you have connections with, and who do you want to have connections with whom you don't. And then being very intentional about reaching out to those people and thinking about how you're going to do it. But if you ask people who loves networking, very few people put their hands up. You ask the same group of people who thinks networking or having a network is essential to their career, everyone's hand goes up. So there is a mismatch between something you might like, but something that is really important. We don't want to make this too difficult or sound like it's, oh, geez, I don't really feel like putting a lot of effort and energy into this, and it seems like a lot of hard work. It's actually not. It's just, at the end of the day, you're talking about something you enjoy, something you're connecting with people that you resonate with. So just putting a little bit of effort in consistently.
Intention and effort.
And consistency is very, very important. One of the things we know that is at the heart of any very successful corporate brand is that wherever you go in the world, you're going to hear the same image, the same values from that brand. And
feel the same experience.
Exactly. So that's why it's so important to be consistent. Just to recap on that visibility exposure bit, which we really know is super, super important. Get clear on your stakeholders. Get clear on the ones that you have the relationship with, the ones you want to reach. Post. If you're going to post on things that are consistent with what your brand is about, and be consistent. Do put some effort into networking, and it doesn't have to be a great deal. But remember, it's something that will pay great dividends at a later point. And the final thing is to be, if you're serious long term about wanting to get into a new role, particularly if it's in a new organization, think a little bit strategically about that. What are the values of that organization? What do they value? What would they need to see, hear and feel from you that would demonstrate to them that you're a perfect fit for their culture and their organization? So think strategically, think long term. You can even do this in your own organization.
Yeah.
It's really a powerful thing to do, to get a mentor, to someone who can support you and say, look, this is where I'm trying to get to in my career. What advice, based on how you see me today, what advice would you give me in order to get from A to B?
Yep.
And then start to fill in those gaps. And that really speaks very strongly to this final bit around exposure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place for us to conclude things. We've talked about why personal branding is so important and why being intentional around it is so important. We've talked about how to go about doing it and the elements that make up your personal brand. And finally, we looked at how you actually go and amplify that brand in the online and physical environment. So I think, some very practical ideas that we will, of course, put in a handy power tool for people to download.
And as a final summary on this, I think there's 3 things that I always talk to people about when it comes to personal brand. And I think this kind of describes what we've been speaking about. Number 1 is know yourself. Do all the things we're talking about. Get to know yourself. Second thing is accept it.
Yeah.
Don't try and think you need to be all things to all people. And then finally, you can be yourself.
Absolutely.
And that is much easier to be yourself than someone else.
Everyone else is taken.
Everyone else is taken. Everyone else is going to believe in you. You are the you. Remember that I know this feels a bit uncomfortable to some people. Some people love this. A lot of people don't, and they feel a bit uncomfortable in talking about themselves. And it's not about being boastful. It's about letting the world know what you're about.
Yeah,
so you
and the
attract
real you.
This is about career progression or prosperity or even realigning yourself to doing something you actually want to do. It might not be about prosperity. It might not be about the next career move up. It might be a move sideways. It might be a change. But it's about doing something. Our work in Power Up is getting people to live a life purposefully that aligns to what they really want to do. And that will lead to longevity and happiness.
Yeah.
And so personal branding is right at the heart of this. So do the work on yourself. Feel great about it. Reach out to us if we can be of any further help.
Yeah.
And we will leave, as Lisa has said, we'll leave some notes to guide you on your way.
Absolutely.
But have a bit of fun with this. Don't take it too seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously, because no one else is, quite frankly. And you will reap the benefits long term by doing this work.
Yeah. And we're looking forward to the next episode, which actually links quite nicely with this and what you were saying about how uncomfortable people feel around it sometimes, because it's about embracing vulnerability. So look forward to a great discussion around that next week.
Excellent.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.